back to 24 Minutes of A24, the podcast that takes a look at the A24 library 24 minutes at a time. I'm Ethan Simi.
And I'm Ben Lawhorn. This week on the pod, we are connecting with the earth and pondering our choices as we talk about Savannah Leaf's directorial debut, Earth Mama.
An intimate coming-of-age story of a pregnant single mother who embraces her Bay Area community as she determines the fate of her family. As is the case with the last few weeks of the pod, we just want to note that this podcast was recorded and created during the 2023 WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes. Without the labor of the writers and the actors that are currently on strike, the movies that we are covering right now would not exist and would not be able to be covered. Luckily, A24 has a brain and a heart, and they have paid their writers and their producers and their movie makers what they deserve. So we can talk about A24 all we want, which is super exciting. The day that we're actually recording this is day number 100 of the WGA strike, which matches the number of days from the 2007 strike. So it will now be officially longer than that strike. And there's not really an end in sight. So, fingers crossed that gets resolved quickly, but just an important note here. Second note, we're going to be spoiling Earth Mama, the new movie from A24. It did come out this year in 2023. We're a little late on the ball to Earth Mama, but that's because it's A24 and we never know how they're going to release things. But we finally saw it. And we have another directorial debut, Ben. Super excited.
Yeah. I mean, they just keep stacking up, we're broken record here, but Screen Drafts, we're ready for you. Like, let's make this happen. I think they do a great job of giving some of these directors like their debut. And this is a great platform for them. A24 knows how to maybe not release a movie nationwide, when we think it's going to, but I think they do a good job of supporting the creatives. And I'm excited to talk about this movie.
Absolutely. Speaking of releasing movies, I've got two pieces of A24 housekeeping, A24 news that we can talk about real quick before we get into Earth Mama. I will just mention quickly, Medusa Deluxe is a new movie from A24. It's coming out in select theaters and on VOD everywhere on August 11th. We are going to be covering that movie on August 18th. So 1 week after it releases, theoretically everywhere, because you can just get it on VOD. So yeah, go watch that movie. We're gonna be talking about it. Watch it, join our conversation. But it is pretty exciting because Earth Mama was not this. It was like select theaters, and then good luck trying to find it after that. We don't know. This one today, the day we're recording, or I think maybe a couple of days ago, got an announcement that was like, it's going to be on VOD on August 11th and select theaters nationwide, which is really exciting and really encouraging. And I think that's like kind of the first time A24 has done that, if I'm not mistaken, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Obviously it was very convenient for us that we were able to watch
they
this.
They probably knew we had the pod. They were like, we got to help these guys out.
Yeah, they're like, Ben has not been able to see a movie without distractions for like 3
we
months.
Gotta bring it to his home.
Let's let him watch it at home because then no one can annoy him there. So,
right.
I'm super stoked about it. Same with like Medusa Deluxe. It's going to be that trailer looks great, and I'm excited to talk about that next week. I hope people will at least rent it, check it out, and then join us for that episode.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. I don't think either of us know a whole lot about it except for like the one trailer that's come out, which is genuinely enthralling to me because the less that I know about a murder mystery set in the world of fashion, the better, because I think that is going to be a really fun movie. Second piece of housekeeping, talk to me. Now, we talked about this movie last week on the pod. We covered it pretty soon after it came out. We had Jamie Girac on the pod, talked to her about it, talked about hopefully the potential of getting the hand as a piece of merch and how we feel about the A24 horror hierarchy. I'm sure you haven't said that since the pod, Ben.
Never again.
And soon after our episode came out, A24 officially announced on the 8th that we're getting a sequel, which is insane to me. So I have a couple of questions for you. I have a couple of thoughts. Here's what we know so far. Rumor is that Raka Raka, the Filippo brothers, have already shot a prequel based on the opening scene. That is what
Hmm.
they have said. That is like word on the street of what this quote unquote sequel might be. I just want to ask you: are you happy with this announcement? Do you want a sequel? We briefly talked about it on the pod, but how are you feeling right now?
I'm excited. I mean, like you said, we all kind of spit like our ideas of what a sequel could be. So I'm very curious to see where it goes. Again, I know I said my example is the hand is Benoit Blanc. Like, let's just make that the only
Just
thing that
follow it.
carries over, because I think it could be a lot of fun. Like, obviously, like Sophie Wilde, her performance was wonderful, and I'm happy to see her on screen, whatever she does next. But I think it could be fun just to, like, let's just do a whole new story, but like with the same element here. We've
Mhm.
established what it can do, so let's see it with other people. But I'll be there either way. I'm ready. I'm ready to check it out. Also, A24, sell those hands, man. I got money burning a hole in my pocket. Like, I'm ready to buy that
Ready?
hand. Let's go.
I want to buy that hand. The announcement came out really soon after the first movie.
Yeah.
It's encouraging. It's really encouraging because I feel like and I tweeted this and I've been kind of pondering this. I feel like this is very much in the vein of Ty West and
Hmm.
X and Pearl, right? X came out, the post credit scene for X was basically a teaser for Pearl, and Ty
A
West came
shock
out.
too for all of us. Like, we had no idea.
Exactly. And came out basically like days after the movie came out, was like, yeah, we shot a prequel the same time. And hopefully A24 like finance it or like buys it from us and we can release it. And of course they did. And I believe that Pearl is better than X, which, is really exciting for directors. And it kind of sets this really fascinating precedent for newcomers to horror. That like Raka Raka, they made this and they were like, we believe in our idea and our lore and our story of original horror so much that we want to shoot a prequel at the same time. And if this one goes well, hopefully that one can get a release and can
Hmm.
also be picked up by A24 or whatever studio was going to buy it out of Sundance. So I think it is really exciting, and I think A24 is setting a really fun precedent for horror to say like, if you have a great original idea, like we will trust you, and you can just
Hmm.
run with it, and we can make some really exciting releases. This strikes me as an announcement slated for like a horror, October release time frame. Do you get that vibe at all? Because we're in the beginning of August here. I'm just obviously we don't know how much is done on the prequel. We don't know if they have it finished or like how much to go or how much they're going to market it or whatever. But it's a very fast announcement, and all it says is coming soon.
Yeah, I'm very curious how much of this has been done, because it is an interesting thing that A24 announced it so soon. Like, did they really announce this just based off the Philippou brothers being like, "Oh yeah, we'd love to do a sequel"? Like, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Okay, great, you can do it." But it still feels like that's such a quick announcement, to put that out like officially on their Twitter and stuff like that. So it's like, is there more to this than we know, or is this really just a we're gonna ride this wave and just like let people know like we believe in it. You guys have made this the second best since Hereditary for an opening weekend. So we're just
Wow.
going to show our support behind these guys and be like, yeah, sequel, greenlit, like, let's make it happen. So I don't know. Like, I could totally see them being like in theaters October 20th, like,
Yeah.
hell yeah, let's do it. Okay. This is the right when Haunted Mansion should have been put out. So this is perfect, yeah, let's watch Talk to Me. But yeah, I don't know. I'm happy at the support A24 is showing. Once again, it's creatives. It's like, cool, you guys proved yourself. Let's run it back.
Yeah, it just strikes me as there's probably a lot more in the barrel than we think, and I wonder if, like, from an A24 perspective, they talked to these guys and they were like, we love this movie.
Hmm.
What can we do with it? Where are we gonna go? How can we cultivate your ideas and maybe go from there? So I love that. Yeah, I think an October release would really be exciting. Obviously, it'd have to get done and marketed and everything by then. Do you think are they gonna do the number two? Are they gonna do Talk to Me? Or
Hmm.
is that like out like what do you think?
I don't know. There's so many ways it could go with this title. Does it go with like Dumb and Dumber 2 with the TOO at the end, or is it
Right.
just like Talk to Me Too? Like, to talk to me. Like, who knows? There's so many ways it could go. But I mean, it seems like it's right there, right? Talk to me. Like,
Yeah.
it feels like it's the way to go.
Feels like it's the way to go. I'd be a little disappointed. I feel like a lot of people may be disappointed if they don't go that route, especially considering like the A24 logo is definitely one of the scariest ones yet, and the hand forms into a 2. And I feel like you could bake that into the
Yeah.
movie. So it seems like a given, but really exciting. I love the idea that we're getting a sequel prequel. I think that's really fun. And of course, we will be seated. We will be covering it. We'll be talking about it. And I'm sure that we will be greatly enjoying it, which is really fun.
Yeah. I just want to say one thing. Sorry, I've been watching some behind the scenes stuff and some interviews with them. It blows my mind that like the first draft of the script, the hand wasn't even in it at all. Like
Oh,
that came
shit.
about on the
Seriously?
second draft. Yeah. And then the literal hand didn't show up till the first day of shooting. Like they
Oh,
got it the
wow.
day they were shooting because they were like trying to figure out which, like they said they had some where the hand was like open like this and they had to figure out like how to position it. And then like the one that's in the movie showed up the day we shot that scene. Like it just got there that day. And like movies are crazy, man. It's nuts. It's like what you can make just in a few weeks. And these guys are run and gun. Like I watched some of their YouTube stuff and like, you know, the humor in it is kind of whatever, but you could tell the skill set that they were building and how that translated over into like feature filmmaking. So I'm super stoked. You know, we didn't know what their next thing would be, and now we do. And I don't know. There's no reason to have any doubt in them.
100% agree. 100%. And they are wild. I know you sent me a video about them and kind of their expedition and their odyssey toward making this movie and selling it at Sundance. And I was like halfway through the video and I texted you this and I was like, I kind of want to make movies. Like these guys are kind of like really telling me that I need to go do this. And they are really some fascinating guys. If we're getting a prequel, I'm really interested to see if it is like a direct prequel to that opening scene, and if we back it up and see how the brother got to that stage, right? Because we join at what I assume would be kind of a kick-ass mic drop of like, this is the final scene of the first movie. Of course, that might not work for everybody, and that just might not work, period. I'm not a movie writer, but like, if that happened, if I was sitting in the theater and I saw this big story and that was the final scene, I would be like, oh fuck, that's the first scene of the next movie. That's insane. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that would be really cool if it was like absolutely tied to that. Last note on Talk to Me before we talk about Earth Mama. Shout out a friend of mine, a friend of my friends. Her name is Jerusha. If she's listening, she listened to the Talk to Me episode, and she just recently traveled back from Portland, Oregon to Australia and wanted to let us know that we mentioned the bus scene, right? Of like, how come they knew he would be at the bus? And like, that's kind of strange. So I guess nighttime communal transportation is a very big thing in Australia because of all the kangaroos on the road. So it is not out of line that they would just be like, oh, he's going to be at the bus stop, because they would know like that's how he travels at night. So Jerusha, shout out. Thanks for the info and the native information. I appreciate that. And checks out. I more respect for the movie.
I like it. Yeah, it's really fun to know.
Pretty cool stuff. All right, let's talk about Earth Mama. This is the new movie that we are talking about. I just finished watching it today, and I finished watching it at work. And all I'll say to start, at least from my perspective, don't watch this in a public place unless you're okay with people watching you start to weep. That would be my 2 cents. Ben, what did you think of Earth Mama overall?
I mean, I'm with you. This is a cry at your own risk kind of movie, like depending on where you're gonna watch this. Man, I thought this movie was beautiful. Like,
gorgeous movie.
Even just like compositionally, like the way they were framing these shots and just like some of the stuff that we got to look at was just like, it was eye candy, but it was not oversaturated. It was not meant to like pop or anything like that, but it was just like, I feel like the best word for this movie, in my opinion, is just intimate. Like, it's a very intimate movie. Like, it's a very like solitary story, and A24 has shown this before. Speaking about crying in public, like it felt like there were shades of After Sun here, where it's just kind of like, we're going to hang out with this person here. or in Afshin's case, like these two people, but like we're not going to do anything over the top really. Like it's almost just kind of like a day in the life of kind of situation, where we're just like we're going to go to their work with them and we're just going to show like what they're listening to, these conversations, as like a pregnant woman who's now, at this like photo place, and these other people are celebrating their families, and like what's going through her mind, and the visitation with her kids, and how much time she gets there, and how if she's like late her daughter's just like gonna shut her out, which is understandable. Kids are kids and they're gonna have their emotions as well. So I loved how intimate and just like kind of delicate this movie was. I think the performances were wonderful. We got a lot of great performances in here, and I just don't know. I think what I'll take away from this is just the beauty of it
Mhm.
all. Like, it's just, I don't know. I like a subtle shot, and I like a long shot. And we got some of those. Like, there's one that I'll never forget. And it's just her sitting in the woods, and she's like dead center, like, but on the lower part of the frame. And we just like a very slow pan out.
Yeah.
It's like, man, this is an amazing
Beautiful.
shot, and it's not the kind of, I mean, it's definitely the Bay Area, but it's not necessarily, I think, what people think of, as someone who grew up, about 40 minutes outside the Bay Area in Sonoma County. Like, it's it's not something I would think of. Like, it took me a while actually in this movie until they started talking about like Nevada and some of these cities. Like, where
Yeah.
is this exactly? Because it's kind of just like open to interpretation. It feels like for a while, but then you kind of understand and get some placement there. But we get to see so many different sides of it, from the beach to the forest to the city, and it's like the Bay Area has all that stuff to offer. So I think they did a nice job. Again, like one of our favorite A24 movies, Last Black Man in San Francisco, they
Yeah.
showed that city in a completely different way, but both are very accurate and reflective of the area. So I think they captured it all really nicely. I think the story was great. It was like small. It was just like so personal. And I don't know. I didn't know what to expect going into it, but I'm super glad that we watched this movie. I thought it was beautiful.
Intimate is the absolute perfect word to describe this movie. I feel like it is uh deceptively simple because it is really just following one woman and her
Mhm.
journey and her daily life, like you mentioned, trying to go to work, trying to see her kids, trying to tackle having a new baby on the way, and what that means for her life. But it is just like devastatingly effective at what it does. I think um everything about this works in harmony with the goal that it is trying to display, and that it is not always the easiest decision to love other people, or to like look out for other people, or to break the cyclical nature of like a broken system that is broken for a reason, right? So I think that is some really heavy thematic topics that it does tackle in a very subtle way, and you can kind of peel away what you want, which I think is really effective in this case, because it doesn't entrench you into like a very very deep level of that stuff, although it does use that as a grounding nature to like kind of push the movie forward. I think that there are some really just gorgeous, beautiful shots in this movie. I think the score is pretty excellent, and like you said, directorial debut. We talk about directorial debuts on here all the time. Earth Mama is stunning, and I really believe, and I wrote this in my Letterboxd review. This is probably, so far at least in the year, and we're in August, is going to be the most underrated A24 release of the year, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I don't know a lot of people that have seen it. I don't know anybody that's really talking about it. I know it came out a while ago, but still, it is a new release for 2023, and I think it is absolutely worth watching every single second. And it does some really effective and powerful storytelling by just letting us listen to other people's conversations that are not our main characters, and not
Mhm.
not hers, not Gia's to tell really. So yeah, I love this movie. I think it's really a tough movie to watch. I think it is, like you said, a kind of a cry at your own risk situation,
Yeah.
but I think it's great, and it's really impressive, the story that is told. let's do true cinema so we can walk through this movie and we can start kind of dissecting it a little bit. We'll kind of pick some out here, and then we can kind of go maybe go into some more detail if necessary or as we see fit. I'll kind of start with the first time that Gia, our main character, visits her son and daughter.
Mhm.
And what I think is really interesting about this movie is that we're not really set up in a very clear fashion as to like where we are, what we're doing, or why we're, visiting our kids. I think as an audience member, you kind of have to deduce what is going on and what system Gia finds herself in, which I
Mhm.
do think is part of the part of like the effective struggle of this movie is that it does make you do the work on that front, and I think that kind of coincides with like the theme and the message of like this is just a difficult situation all the way around, and like it's just like not one you might want to be in, and that is what
Yeah.
it is. So she visits her son and her daughter, and specifically her daughter Shayna, won't talk to her, is just ignoring her. And as a father of two small girls, I was like, this is like minutes into the movie, and I was like, fuck, this is gonna be a tough watch. This is gonna be brutal. And it was. And that's just like hard to see because Gia is visiting her children, which we find out for 1 hour a week in a supervised setting through the
Mhm.
state. And those are her visitation rights. And her daughter just shut her out. And honestly, it's just pretty fucking brutal.
It really is, and I think you made a good point that this movie just is kind of like, here's where we are, catch up. Like we're not gonna hold your hand through it, and that's like a lot of what Gia has to go through this whole movie. Just like
Right.
these are the cards you've been dealt. This is where we're at, so we're not gonna cut you any slack. This is just how it goes, and we get that, in some of those meetings that she has, where people are like, well. Can you work more hours? She's like, well, no, not with all the classes you're making me go to. Like, there's just
Hmm.
so much stuff I have to do. So there's only so many hours in the day and still got to have a life and all that kind of stuff. So I think this was a great, beginning to kind of let us know, okay, sometimes you run into traffic and sometimes your kids don't understand that stuff. They're just gonna be like, well, you're late. That's all I know. And that's how it works for them. And it's just like, you could just feel the heartbreak for GX. It's like we later
Yeah.
learn like she only gets 1 hour once a week. And she just got iced out by her daughter for that 1 hour. It's like, oh, that'd be so heartbreaking to know, like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? To go like 14 days without any communication with your daughter. Like, oh, that's just gotta be so rough. So, great way to set the tone, I think.
Yeah, I can't even. I literally just like can't imagine it. To be honest, and one of the main driving forces of this movie is the fact that Gia is pregnant and she's getting ready to have a third child. And she is kind of struck with this, kind of it's mentioned in the movie like this religious aspect or like the spiritual aspect of like what you feel needs to be done or what you feel in
Mhm.
your life for those around you. She's kind of struck with this like I don't know, like this need to think about breaking the cycle that she's in, and that is kind of what we see throughout and hear from a lot of her friends and family and people that she sets up in photographs and things like that of like being in a home broke these people, and like and
Mhm.
really that is a track that is inescapable, even once they become an adult, even once they own their own lives. And so Gia's met with this burden of like, do I keep this kid and have child protective services take them away from me and go through the same thing that I'm going through with Shayna, her daughter, and then
Mhm.
Trey, her son, that's a little older, or does she offer it up for adoption? And that's a really big thing, and we'll get into that and talk about that because there's some very pivotal moments with that. But I think that is a really, really well done, like long theme and long idea that
Mhm.
perpetuates the film. It's not just like one section or one act. Like that is what we're dealing with throughout the entire thing. Like you mentioned, while also dealing with everything else, which is it just seems impossible nearly. Next up, I have the this therapy like class session about mothers. This is kind of the first time that we use this narrative device of other people that are in these classes that Gia is having to take, And we kind of find out that Gia does come from a background of substance abuse and addiction, and that's why she's in these classes. And her children were taken from her, and now are with the state. And we hear these stories from other mothers of how, to to quote Succession of like, does the poison drip through? And like the poison drips through, and that is regardless of if you try to make it stop, it will still drip, which is really powerful stuff. And I love, again, that we hear from all of these other people that are going through a very similar situation as Gia, because it just makes you feel that much worse for what Gia's going through of like, holy shit, like a lot of people are going through this, and that's really hard.
Yeah, I mean, this comes from later in the movie, but it's the same kind of session. And there's one woman who says something along the lines of just like how mad she was at her mom for doing her best with what she had, and that she realizes that she's now doing the same thing to her kids, and just how hard that is. And it's like, yeah, some of this is just cyclical because that's the way the system is set up. It's like once you're down, you're staying down. And that's super unfortunate and just like sad, and we were kind of exposed to a lot of that kind of stuff in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. It is super sad stuff. Next one on the list, setting up the girl for some photos in a dress, very beautiful dress, very intimate scene of her just like fixing her dress and going around and telling her she looks nice. And then, dude, we get this Dominic Fike fucking jump scare, brother. I was like, oh, yeah. that's our boy. That's Dominic Fike.
Dude, that threw me off. I was like, is that Euphoria kid? Like, is he gonna bust out his guitar and sing for 5 minutes right now? Like, what's about to happen?
We're taking a musical break.
Yeah, like, what's going on? It took me a sec. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's who that is, because I don't think there's many people that look like him, but is that him? But yeah, it is indeed Dominic Fike just showing up out of nowhere. We got like 4 minutes of him or something throughout the movie. So yeah, it was a surprise.
Handful of lines from our boy, which was, I thought he fit well. I thought it worked, and I do think in this type of a case, it's a directorial debut with an unknown cast from a pretty unknown director, and seeing Dominic Fike does lend that extra little bit of like legitimacy to it of like, oh, cool, like I know who that guy is. Like, people like they were able to get him for this movie, which I think is pretty cool. And besides that point, again, I think this is a pretty intimate moment that works really well, just to kind of figure out like how Gia compartmentalizes like her life at work and her life at home, and her life with CPS and these other things. And I believe like woven into this is where Gia has to ask her boss for like a $100 advance because she doesn't want her new baby coming out into the world with no clothes. And I was just fucking hit with that. And I was like, damn, like that is so tough. And like, it's not necessarily even designed to be like that kind of moment that's a gut punch. It's just part of her life, and it happens, and it's nuanced and intimate, and then we just move on. But it's like, oh wow, that's just how Gia has to live. She just has to figure this out and like move on to the next thing is really hard.
Yeah, and that's one thing this movie does really well with these kind of scenes is we don't see the conclusion or the resolution of the scene.
Right.
Like we just see the boss just kind of look at her, and then we cut, and it's like, did she get it? Did she not? Like we don't know, but it's just like that, like whether or not she got it isn't necessarily as important as the fact that she had to even ask. Like that's the message that we're getting across here. So I think there isn't, they're not playing for your emotions here. Like they're just telling a pretty straightforward story, but your emotions are going to be felt, I think, throughout the movie.
And that is one thing that does work really well for me in this movie, is that it doesn't feel manipulative, like just at all, just like whatsoever. We're not going for emotional moments. We're just explaining this life, this very real life that a lot of people live. And we're not trying to like draw things out of the audience. So I think that works well. Next on the list, Gia stealing diapers from someone at the park. My heart sunk for her when she did it, and I was like, oh man, well, at least she can like walk away and get away with it, and like it's just on her conscience. I get it. Like she has to do what she has to do. But kind of not really. She gets called out and people start yelling at her and see her do it, and then she has to hop in her car and take a moment to live with what action she just did. And that is a really short but a really tough scene to watch, but also, you know, it's hard not to feel kind of encouraged by her to be like, she's fucking trying. She's trying
Yeah.
her hardest to like give her child maybe what she didn't have or what she's afraid that her child might not have. She's really trying her hardest, like you mentioned in that scene of like, doing the most with what you have. And she's just at the point where even if she did get that $100 advance, she can't afford diapers, and so we got to jack them from someone at the park. Which I'm glad that I never found myself in that situation. I can only imagine, but that's hard.
Yeah, super tough, and I think that's reiterated throughout this movie too. It's just like, what what wouldn't you do for your kids, kind of
Hmm.
thing, and that's kind of proven here because even earlier when she's talking to one of the counselors, it's like, I love this kid, like I don't even know this kid, but I would do anything for it, and then we kind of see that on screen through this, and it's just like, yeah, I don't like blame her, like it's not right, but it's just like you got to do what you got to do. You got to take care. You're
Yeah.
gonna what wouldn't you do? That kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. Next one on the list, her on the phone with Trey, her son. This is another. This was a really heartbreaking scene for me. Really tough because if I put myself in Gio's shoes, and if I only saw my daughters for 1 hour once a week, and one of them called me and was like, "Hey, I want you to come pick me up. I want to go home,"
Hmm.
and I literally couldn't do it. I can't even fathom what that might feel like. And repetitively throughout the film, which I think is a really clever use of this kind of like stress inducer that we get, is that her cell phone minutes and her like
Hmm.
credits are winding down. So every time she answers the phone, we hear this message of like, you have 91 cents left, please pay your bill or please make a payment. So she answers the phone from Trey, and that's what we hear first, and she uses a lot of that time and a lot of that money to play him a song on her stereo. And this is the second time that we hear this song that is a really sad song, to help him get to sleep. And
Hmm.
again, we're with Gia of like, what wouldn't you do? Like you have to navigate how to deal with these situations because you can't just go see your kid. And this is the only way that she can comfort him, is to say, just pretend that I'm there and I'll play you this song.
Hmm.
Uh, to me, this was among the most heartbreaking scenes.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Because I think everyone's initial instinct would be like, okay, I'm on my way. Like whenever you hear
Oh
something
yeah.
like that, so you see her almost have to like push that down and just be like, okay, what's going on? Like, tell me what's happening. Like, let's work through this kind of thing. It's like, oh, that'd just be so hard because you just know she's supposed to get in her car and go like bring them home, and she can't. So watching her, like you said, navigate that while sacrificing her minutes, throughout all this, it's just like, man, you're right. It's like one of the most heartbreaking scenes of this movie.
There is a scene after this that I wanted to ask you about, because there's a couple scenes that we get where she is like in the forest, or she is kind of like not necessarily dreaming, but it is like these dreamlike
Hmm.
states that we enter, right? There's this moment where she is in the doctor's office, she's in the bathroom, and right before this we hear a video talking about like how
Hmm.
imperative it is to not mess with like your child's umbilical cord once they're born, and don't fiddle with it and it'll fall off on its own. She then proceeds to have some sort of vision or fear or
Yeah.
something about pulling the umbilical cord out through her stomach, and it looked like braided hair to me. How did you interpret this scene? Because I think this was the one where I was just like, whoa, like where are we treading with this and what are we trying to decipher?
Yeah, I couldn't tell exactly what it was, if it was meant to like be wood and almost like a branch of sorts, or like you said,
Yeah.
like hair. Also, could it have been the umbilical cord on like, day whatever when it's like dried up and ready to fall off? Like I
Oh,
couldn't tell
sure.
exactly what it was supposed to be, but there was like the clamp on the end. But yeah, it's almost just kind of those intrusive thoughts of like, well, if I do this, maybe this will solve the problem, or just like out of a
Mhm.
curiosity. Like I couldn't tell. It's just, I think it was one of those great scenes that was kind of left open to interpretation, and just kind of experiencing that with Gia, and yeah, this vision that she had.
And that like really scary nature of feeling alone and physically being alone and having that thought, because Gia is pretty consistent in her telling of like, I don't want to let other people down. And so like that is one of those moments where it's like, if this just happens, or if I were to do this, maybe nobody gets let down, and like it
Hmm.
can just be over and we can just move on from this situation. So yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that was a really interesting thing to put in there. I don't know if it works 100%, but I think it does add a really cool depth to the movie of Gia's like mindset and her frame of mind.
Hmm.
Shortly after this, we get her having a confrontation with her friend Trina. Um, really kind of at this Fast and Furious event that's going down in the
Hmm.
Bay Area. And I was like, sick, our girls in the franchise. We get a really nice tracking shot through this crowd, which I thought was really impressive and worked well, and kind of confronts about Gia considering giving up her child for an open adoption. And this is really the first time she's confronted with her best friend, who is actually like spiritual and religious, and calls her out and tries to play that card.
Yeah.
Um, and that scene in and of itself is hard to watch, because we spent this much time with Gia and we're just like, do what's best. Like, this is what is best. And then she's confronted by her friend. How did this scene and this like confrontation work for you?
Yeah, I mean, she'd been trying to avoid this friend for so long, and it's
Yeah.
like when she gets confronted with her, exactly what she was afraid would happen happens. Like she pulls
Yeah.
kind of the religious side of it into it, and then starts calling her out of like, well, you're not even like worthy to be a mom, and we need to
Truly
protect our
cold stuff.
kids. Yeah,
Yeah.
just super rough stuff to hear. So yeah, this was an intense scene without a doubt, and like you said, a great tracking shot, a great, just kind of like, I think it was a oneer, just kind of like back and forth, and just shot really well. And yeah, I don't know, great scene.
Great scene for sure. This leads to Gia smoking, and I assume it's crack or whatever it is. It's not really specified, but her sister deals it for a living, I believe, and
Hmm.
and Gia lives with her sister, hence why CPS has kind of taken her kids. Um, and dude, this was tough, because I didn't expect the movie to go in this direction. I did not
Yeah.
think we were gonna go to like, let's make bad decisions. I genuinely thought like we were shaping up to be like, this is awesome. Gia made the right decision. She broke the cyclical nature of the broken system. She gave her kid up for an open adoption. She's happy. She did it, and we're all satisfied. And that would have been a fine movie. But I do think that this scene um brings it to a different level that I didn't know that it was going to go to, because I was just
Hmm.
like, don't, like, Gia, come on, like, you got it, we got to stop this, you got to not do this. And soon after, we kind of figure out, she has a conversation with Miss Carmen, really important figure in this movie, about,
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do, and I don't want to let people down and all this stuff. And my heart just like dropped for her, and I was just like, you were so close to like doing what you wanted, and then you went back.
And again, it's another one of those things where this movie doesn't do the work for you necessarily, because at one point we're just kind of in this class with Gia, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's in there where they talk about like, all these people here are addicts, and that's not a thing that you stop being. It's just a thing that you like work through. And like, oh, okay, like I wasn't super aware that that was like a thing that Gia was dealing with. And then so when this shot happens later on, it's like, oh, okay, this makes a lot more sense now. It's this weird mix of being like a horrifying shot, but also a beautiful shot,
Yep. Yep.
because we don't actually see her smoke anything. Like we see the pipe, we see it like kind of start to happen. But then like the camera takes us to the left, and it's like taking us through what her feelings are, like her literal emotions and feelings, because we see her feet kind of like in the forest and stuff. It's like, oh, this is like her escape. This is what she's
Mhm.
doing right now. And she's just like she's going away basically. And I thought it was just like, it was such a cool shot to see. Obviously, like a super sad and heartbreaking thing that's going on, but just displayed in such an interesting way.
And the filmmaking of the movie absolutely lends itself to this type of a moment where it
Hmm.
is so close, it is so intimate, it is so focused on like the structure of the shot that looks so gorgeous and tells a story in and of itself. This is kind of like the beginning of the end, really like the final 15 or 20 minutes of the movie. Next we see Gia's water break. She runs out of cell phone minutes while trying to call someone to take her to the hospital. Luckily, she has her friend take her to the hospital and is able to get there. And really, we go through her, obviously her giving birth, and then her choosing an open adoptions.
Hmm.
Maybe, I don't know. I think that's something that is worth kind of talking about here in a second. But having the family come in that she was considering for an open adoption and having them hold her child and do, you know, which I think is a wonderful thing that this movie did. It everything it did was really authentic. There's two specific moments. This mom of this family does like skin to skin contact with this new baby,
Hmm.
and that's like I was in the hospital doing that, like my with my child. And then Gia is on her way to like her final court hearing, the final few minutes of the movie, and she starts like leaking through her shirt, and she asks for a napkin.
Hmm.
It's like, oh shit, like that is so real and so authentic. And these little moments that really make this feel more intimate and more real. But I want to know, did she decide to do an open adoption, or what do you think?
I think she did. I think kind of realized that this was probably the best option overall. Like, still tough without a doubt,
Mm-hmm.
but I think, even just trying to balance time with her two kids, her two previous children, and the idea of bringing in a third one and having to handle that just with everything else that's going on. And I feel like a lot of the stories that we heard earlier, like from some of her friends about, CPS and stuff, I feel like that really kind of like stayed with her. It's like, well, what's the best thing for my kid? And this
Yeah.
is probably what it is. So maybe it's naive of me, but I'm choosing to believe that she was like, she made this decision on her own. She's like, this is the best thing to do.
I agree with you. I believe that she did as well, and I don't think she would have invited that family in unless she was
Hmm.
pretty close to making that decision.
Yeah.
And it's revealed in this scene she's only 24, and that is
Hmm.
super wild. And then we do get this final kind of court hearing where she tells the judge like, I am requesting more frequent and longer and unsupervised visits with my children that are currently in CPS. We don't get a resolution on that either, which I
Hmm.
again is a smart move on this movie's part to leave things up in the air, that we hope the best for Gia, but maybe expect the worst and hope that she can be the link that breaks this cyclical chain and system. Uh, I think overall a really powerful movie and a
Yeah.
really a movie that will stay with me, where at the end of the year when I look back on my 2023 rankings, I will probably move it up
Mm.
because I will remember certain parts and be like, that was just so special, or that was made so well compared to maybe a lot of other things that are out there. I think my true cinema moment is kind of a tie between two things. One of them is on the list, being on the phone with Trey. I mentioned
Hmm.
really heartbreaking, really tough to watch, handled exceptionally well in this scene. The other one you kind of mentioned a little bit is when we are hearing and Gia is listening to these other stories of
Hmm.
people that she had just taken photos of, and a
Yeah.
couple of them are these guys, these really tough looking guys that basically say like, I look tough, but I'm broken on the inside, and
Hmm.
moving from house to house to house, that broke me, and that's a path I can never get off of, and it shaped who I am right now to this day. And I just love that is so interwoven to Gia's path and her curiosity of trying to understand more about how to make the right decision and how to make the best decision for her new child, and realize
Yeah.
it's never too late to choose the right thing. So I think it is a subtle moment, but it is a powerful one.
Oh yeah. Super powerful moment. I mean, we've talked about therapy and things like that on here, and it's just amazing how much of your
Yeah.
childhood is just gonna like set the path for the rest of your life. And
Wild.
these stories really just kind of hit that home. It's like, oh yeah, I changed in that moment and I will never be able to go back. It's like that's crazy to hear, but it's so true. Um, my moment is also not on the list, but it's when she meets the family for the first time at the restaurant,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
specifically when she's sitting with the daughter in the booth, and they're
Mm.
kind of talking about like playing basketball and all that kind of stuff. She's like, "Oh yeah, I was going to go to this college," and she's like, "Well, what happened?" And it's just the phrase that she used, where she's just like, the daughter was like, well, you could still go, you could do whatever. Then G responds with something along the lines of like, "I got new dreams."
Yeah.
And I really love that, because it's like, yeah, I feel like, again, like, you're the parent out of the two of us here, but it's just like obvious that when someone comes into your life like that, everything changes. It's like your dreams, your goals, your whatever has to change.
Mhm.
And it was so interesting that that's how she chose to phrase like, "I had a kid." It's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
"I got new dreams." I'm like, man, that's a really powerful way to say this, rather than just like, "I was 16, I got pregnant, whatever, that kind of thing." Just like, "No, I got new dreams." And that just really hit me. I thought it was a beautiful scene. Just another one of those moments where it's like a line of dialogue is something I'm going to remember from this movie. It's like, fuck, man, that was powerful.
And that line of dialogue as well really speaks to Gia's struggle to get out of this system of like,
Yeah.
that is one of her dreams is to put the best foot forward for her kids and herself, and to fix this and to figure it out. And it is a really great juxtaposition to like young and part of a good family that lives in a different part of town, that is, has the opportunity to look for an open adoption and bring someone into their
Hmm.
family, and eat at a buffet and these other things that Gia doesn't have, and really kind of puts them side by side. That's a really really good pick. Okay, we only have one A1 act that we're gonna do. We normally do two, so usually do two.
Hmm.
This is a directorial debut. We've covered directorial debuts for A1 acts, I think, like at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that we're over 100 episodes, I'm sure that it's at least 2 or 3 times. But go back, listen to some of those episodes, and seek out other directorial debuts under the A24 banner. They exist, they're out there, and they're excellent. The one that we're going to tackle right now is movies about motherhood. Of course, this is a movie about motherhood as much as it is, a coming of age story. Here's the short list that I've got here: Mamma Mia, Dumbo, Stepmom, Bad Moms, Brave, Ladybird, Freaky Friday, Tully, Room, Mermaids, Serial Mom, Mommy Dearest, Away We Go, Steel Magnolias, The Lost Daughter, Terms of Endearment, Mother, the Darren Aronofsky fucking horror flick,
Exclamation point, mother.
exclamation point, Hereditary, and Juno. I love that you put The Lost Daughter on here. Shout out Maggie Gyllenhaal. You love to see it.
Yeah.
Also, that movie, like, I think is really underrated. I think that's a great movie.
So
It's not my
good.
pick, but I think it's a great movie.
Yeah, it's so good.
I don't. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know half of these movies, and I feel like you made some of them up just based on the titles.
We'll never know. We'll
I
never
get
know.
you could have. It's totally possible. I'm not picking Mother. That's for sure. Do you know what you're picking?
I do. I'm
All right,
going
go
off
for it.
script.
Go off script.
A movie we've covered, a movie I love, and another movie that has a line of dialogue I'll never forget. 20th Century Women.
Bang it.
I love that movie so much. And there's a line in there when she says, like, "You get to see my kid in a way I'll never get to see him."
Oof.
Just like out in the world and stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, that's true. When you're a parent, you can only see your kids a certain way, as a parent, and you'll never get to see them just as a person out on their own. It's just impossible to do.
Yeah.
And that line of dialogue is another one. It's like, man, that's just so true.
That line of dialogue is too heartbreaking for me. It's too tough because
Yeah.
I'm like a month away from my oldest going into kindergarten, being away from me all day for the very first time. My youngest is going into a preschool, and that'll be her first time going and doing school things and having a life outside of my four walls. So I don't plan to rewatch 20th Century Women anytime in the next 16
wouldn't
years.
plan
Is
on
probably
it, yeah.
is what I'm thinking here. That'll just decimate me. Look, I'm gonna go with a fun pick here. I'm going with Freaky Friday.
Yeah.
Shout out Freaky Friday. I grew up on this movie. I watched it just constantly. I was definitely of the age where I was like, Lindsay Lohan, super hot. Would just kill to have her as my crush in real life.
Mhm.
The brother is funny. I remember the walrus bit from this movie. That's a great bit.
Mhm.
Where he sticks chopsticks up his nose, and mother daughter, they figure out they figure out how to do it, how to have a relationship, how to be friends, and it's a funny movie. I like
You know what? Great pick. Jamie Lee Curtis, also a great crush. You
JLC.
know, if you want that proven right, either watch True Lies or Christmas with the Cranks. You'll have it like certified. So,
Facts.
a queen. We love Jamie Curtis.
And maybe getting a sequel. I've heard both of them are on board for a sequel.
Yeah, I think that'd be sweet. I would love to see that. I'd be curious to see what they would do with it. But
That'd be
yeah,
sick.
Lilo wants her comeback, and now's the
Yeah.
time.
Loki might like fire that up tonight. I might have to watch that because I remember the song in that movie just absolutely being a heater at the end, just being like,
Mhm.
oh my god, and watching JLC just go ham on the guitar.
Oh yeah, shredding.
Incredible stuff, really. Okay, A24 ranking for Earth Mama. I haven't really thought of mine, and
Yeah.
this is tough because it's a good movie. It's a very strong movie, but it also is so quaint and personal and intimate that it does lack kind of that extra edge that really calls to me in movies where
Mhm.
it just like really sticks to me or it's more my energy or my speed. But I think it's really good. I'd I'd probably give this like a B plus 24. I think it's underrated in the A24 catalog already, which
Mhm.
might be a hot take or not. I think it's a strong directorial debut. I think it's a really powerful and well displayed, sensitive topic and subject and themes. Uh,
Yeah.
and it is a really important movie for parents to watch. I think it really shares like the lengths you'd go for your kid, and also is a great statement of like having that ability to break cycles, even if it isn't this detrimental person of color cycle that Gia is in,
Mhm.
and young mother cycle. I think it does give a lot of leeway to thinking about that.
Yeah. No, I think let's make that two. So I'm also going with a B plus 24. And this
Sick.
everything you said is super accurate. And again, it's the kind of thing where come January next year and I'm looking back on the list, like I could see this maybe going up to an A minus.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just it's the kind of movie that is beautiful and I would recommend it to anybody. I don't know when I'm gonna throw it back on. Um,
Sure.
you know what I mean? Like, and it's not out of like a dislike or anything. It's just like, man, I feel like I experienced it. I loved it. It was great. I don't know when I'm going to rewatch it immediately, but it's something I would tell everybody to watch because I think it's a really important story. So yeah, I'm gonna go with a B plus 24.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what director Savannah Leaf does next. I think
Hmm.
it's really promising. Whatever story she wants to tell and however she's going to do that, I hope it's with A24, and I hope they see that promise in her, and I'm sure
Yeah.
that they do. Much like you, I don't know when I'll revisit it, but I think it is a definite recommend on my part if you're looking for something, especially in the 2023 that we're living in with the IP dominated culture. I think it's an incredible flick
Hmm.
to watch, to consume, and to recommend to other people and say like, hey, a little known movie, yeah, A24, but this is not Barbie. This is not the Meg 2. This
Yeah.
is something smaller, something more intimate, and something a little bit more powerful than any of those could offer.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great summation of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we both really enjoyed this. We would love to know what you guys thought about Earth Mama. Hopefully you've checked it out. If not, again, I recommend from both of us. Let us know what you think. We are on Twitter and Instagram at 24 minutes of A24. Don't forget to subscribe. Next week we're gonna be talking about Medusa Deluxe, like we talked about at the opening.
Yes.
And it
I
looks
just
like
love I just love that title. Medusa
yeah,
Deluxe
it's
is a
great.
fire title.
And it looks kind of like a John Waters murder mystery. Like, what
Yes.
more could you possibly want? So I think it's gonna be super fun.
Do you
It's
know
gonna
how long Medusa Deluxe is? I'm just curious, like from a runtime. I'm just curious.
I don't. Let's see if we can
Okay,
find
it
that
looks
out.
like it is 101 minutes, that's pretty good. It's pretty solid.
Yeah.
I'll take
Um,
it.
yeah. And actually, yeah, that's like just 4 minutes longer than the movie we're talking about tonight. So that's not bad at all.
Wow. Okay. Cool. And again, like a pretty unknown cast, at least from my perspective of what I'm seeing here on IMDb, which is really
Hmm.
exciting.
Yeah. No, I think this is going to be fun. Coming to VOD on the 11th,
Hmm.
I believe, when this episode is dropping. So we can rent it or watch it also in select theaters. So check it out so you can listen to us talk about it. And you can listen to us talk about it on YouTube. You could watch us
Yeah.
talk about it. You could have the audio and video all in one. Subscribe there, hit the bell, all that kind of stuff. And if you have any interest in becoming a patron and listening to us talk about movies that aren't A24, there's definitely a place that you could go do that. We just finished up our, well, I mean, in a week we will have finished up our Disney rides movies, which was kind
Yep.
of fun.
That was a
Um,
ride in and of itself. I
it,
was
it really was.
surprised.
That was a up and down roller coaster
Some
for
really
sure.
low lows and some high highs.
Yeah. And then in anticipation of the creator, which we are both super excited
So
about,
excited.
we are going to be covering some artificial intelligence movies, starting out with Mr. Spielberg's movie himself, AI. So, yeah, if you
Let
want to hear us talk about it. Oh, yeah.
and
What's up?
let's clarify. These are movies about artificial intelligence, not written by artificial intelligence.
Yes. Yeah.
Very
100%.
important.
Yeah. Although those I'm sure would be absolutely bonkers. So, yeah, those ones are 24 minutes exactly. Otherwise, we get a punishment. It's a lot of fun. I imagine it's fun to listen to. I don't know that it's fun for us when we get the punishments, but they're kind of fun episodes. But yeah, if you want to become a patron and support the pod, we would super appreciate that. So, but either way, thanks so much for listening and for your support. I am Ben Lawhorn.
And I'm Ethan Simi. Spring break forever, bitches.